All right, everyone. Today is Travel Tip Tuesday. And if you guys are tuning in live, thank you so much. I'm very excited to start this new series, again, called Travel Tip Tuesday, which is just informing you guys about what's kind of going on in the travel industry right now. And I know we're all curious about it. I know I am. And today I have an amazing guest, Myra Morales, who is a friend of mine, has been a friend of mine for a few years now, and is actually a realtor on the Treasure Coast here too. I don't know how she does it all, but she happens to be a flight attendant and a realtor. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about her and give us some tips and tricks. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and we will do our best to answer them all. But thank you, Myra, for joining us today in my first episode.
All right. Hi. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. So if you want to just start, tell us a little bit about you and how you became a flight attendant and why you did.
So basically, I've been a realtor for the last 4 years, and then I needed something that I can still work with my travel, work in my travels, and still have the flexibility with the real estate. So flight attendant was something that just fit in perfectly. Flexible schedule, and the fact that I tag team it with my husband made it a whole lot easier for us to be able to kind of do it together, and having just so much fun. Haven't seen people for a long time. All of a sudden they look at me and they're like, what do you got going on? And I'm like, I just feel like I'm 25 years old again and just loving life. So having a really good time with being a flight attendant, and my children are grown, and why not? I mean, this is the best time to do it,
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that goes through everybody's mind at some point in their life. They're like, maybe I'll be a flight attendant. Like, because you get to go see the world or wherever you might.
I will say this: it's not a glamorous type of job. I will say that the aviation industry is not glamorous per se, but I think it's more so on every day you make it's as special as you want it to be, because I'm totally fine with, I work for one of the regional carriers, and so we do domestic flights, and we go to a lot of the small towns, but there's a lot of small towns in America that I would have never, they're not on your typical, vacation hotspot or whatever, but there's a ton of history behind it, or there's these places that like I would have never gone to, and I'm like, oh my god, this is a super cute town or whatever, and I'm here like that or whatever, or 18 hours, and like I'm gonna make the best of it. So I try to plan my trips accordingly, so that I'm like, so for the first year or two, it was just a matter of, okay, what cities have I not been to, and that's pretty much how I try to pick my trips, just so that I can like go to these little towns that I would have never gone to. I mean, who goes to, let's see, I'm thinking of, well, Savannah's my favorite, but Savannah kind of is like a
touristy
spot,
place.
But, so,
what about Oklahoma? We like Oklahoma.
Well, it was like 104 degrees when I was in Oklahoma, so I was like, oh my god, I swear, I think the rubber on my slipper was like about to melt. I'm like, okay, I'm from Florida, and I'm not used to this heat. Like it's a different type of heat.
Yeah.
But let's see, in Allentown, Pennsylvania, it's not necessarily your destination. Oh my god, it's so funny! I just thought of your brother too. So all of these small towns where you just don't think of, and it's like, wow, this is super cool. So I try to pick places where either I know somebody, or it's not too far away where I can meet up with a friend, or in Burlington, Vermont. I mean, it looks like a Christmas card. It is. I did my first snow angel in Burlington, Vermont. So just little things like that I just try to make the best of it, and I get a kick out of it. Now that just opened up the doors to, we went to Ireland, and we went, just all these different places when I'm not working, and I can, manage to get away with my husband and I and work it out. So I'm trying to go to as many far off places as I can, because the desire to travel is definitely there. So
and I feel like you definitely have to have a passion for traveling to do what you do.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So and I would just love going to those small towns myself, because that's what I do when I travel. Even when I travel to other countries, I mean, I will go to those big cities like Paris, Berlin, France, whatever. Well, France isn't a city, but it's a city. But I will go to those smaller towns like Marseille, or I went to, what was that small town that I went to in I mean, I've been to like Herning in Denmark, and I've been to all the little cities, Durness in
Sorrento in
Scotland.
Italy is by far my favorite, and that's
Oh,
not, you don't hear about like Sorrento, you know, and it's beautiful. It's
yes, it
gorgeous.
is. It is. So it's like going to those smaller places. That's what I tell people when they go to travel. Like, if you're going to a country, great. Like, go to the bigger places, like see them for a second, and then like go to the smaller places to get the real culture of where you're traveling to. I think it's so important. And that's the same to be said with the US. You know, the big cities, it's funny, because my mom is from Dominican Republic, when I go down to Dominican Republic, my cousins are like, oh yeah, you're from Florida, like you're from Miami. I was like, no, I'm not from Miami. Like, I'm from a small town 2 hours south or north of Miami.
Yeah,
So
and people ask me all the time. They're like, I'm like, well, just think of this. Think of West Palm Beach. I'm about 45 minutes north of there, something like
yeah.
that, you know.
Well, even our small little town has kind of gotten on the map, like especially with Port St. Lucie. It's crazy. I remember going when my brother used to live in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I went up there one time. We went to, like, he showed me like this eco center that they had there. It's like got a really cool lookout to it, and they have a lot about the industry, like Erie, Pennsylvania, and their ecosystem there. And the guy at the front, my brother is just like my dad, where he was like, yeah, my sister's visiting from Florida, and blah, blah. He'll tell everybody his whole life story. And then he told them that I was visiting from Florida, and the guy's like, oh, from where? And I was like, oh, just this small town, same thing, like 30 minutes of north of West Palm. And he's like, oh, Stewart? And I was like, yeah, how'd you know? In Erie, Pennsylvania.
That's
So
funny.
it's so funny. All right. Hi, Lana. Thanks for popping on. She said she's been excited about this all day. Well, me too. Yeah, so it's really cool that you do that and that you can manage all of that. And so why we're here today is really to talk about traveling after COVID-19, or kind of like in the midst of it all. So I know that a lot of people have questions out there, and if you guys are live, feel free to pop your questions in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. But I want to kind of go into how is flying during Corona? So when everything was going on, like, what did you see on, I know you were still on flights, obviously, because flights were still going on. I know that they had brought some of them down, like not as many flights. Just describe that experience and kind of how it's flowed into changing.
I mean, what the biggest impact that I see is that, so say from West Palm Beach to Charlotte, prior to COVID, we had maybe 5 to 7 flights a day, and now it's down to 2 or 3 a day. So we're still flying, but what we did was just cut back immensely on, you know, the number of flights. So at the same time, there's still opportunity. It's not like you're going to go to the airport and be like, oh my gosh, I can't get to this place. Like, you can get there. It's just your choices are going to be limited. There are some airlines that just completely stop flying altogether to some of the smaller towns. I did see that. My airlines hasn't done that, and you know, that's kudos to us for still being able to just, you know, accommodate any sort of flying. We do know that it's important for people to get from place to place, so we want to be able to accommodate that. And now what they've done is they're only allowing 60% of the aircraft to be filled, because they want to leave that a little extra room. So you're you're not going to see a completely empty flight, but it won't be filled to capacity. You're not going to have 186 passengers anymore. You know, they're limiting that to be able to try to give a little bit of distance in between. And one thing for sure that we've been seeing a lot of is, and people don't see that because I guess they kind of, you know, they get in after it's all done, which is our the cleaning department. Like, they're doing their job. They get in there, they wipe up quickly. So They go in, they wipe down the seats, and then the next flight comes in. So everybody's always in a rush because, we're doing more steps in between trying to make that next flight, and everything happens smoothly. So a lot of the stuff is happening behind the scenes that people don't see.
Yeah.
But definitely some of the precautions are there. As of yesterday, all passengers are required to wear a face mask now, or they won't be allowed to board, unless you have an allergy, or if there's some sort of religious belief, or there's some sort of circumstance as to why you're not wearing a mask, but it will be addressed with the gate agent. It is a requirement for all passengers to have a mask on, and it is a requirement for all airline employees to have a mask while we are traveling. So whether I'm working or traveling, commuting or something along those lines, I got to wear a mask also.
Yeah. Wow. So is there a level of mask that you're required to wear, or is it just any type of mask?
Any type of mask.
Okay. That's really
Yeah, and
interesting.
it's more so for so they have them on the aircrafts, and we're not just passing them out to the passengers, but everybody's notified prior to. But if there is a percentage where if somebody just didn't have one and they need one, then they'll supply it. But I don't want to say that, oh yeah, there's, just come by and get your mask. I think the idea is that they're trying to encourage everybody to bring their own.
Okay. And I'm sure that that's like in all of the itinerary stuff, like you're required to bring a mask and
Correct.
stuff like that.
Like with your reminder or whatever, I'm sure that that's going to be part of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So that just happened yesterday. That's really new.
It did. It went into effect yesterday.
Were you seeing a lot of people doing that already, wearing a mask, like when flying, or?
It has been the funniest experience to fly these days because, I mean, I've had flights and more flights than I can count where there's been less than 10 passengers on each of the flights. So, I'll walk right up to the passengers and I'm like, okay, today you get your personalized safety briefing. And, so I just like walk right up to them because, well, I'm keeping my distance, but at the same time, I mean, it's kind of, I felt so far away when they're sitting, there's
light years
5
away.
people. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to walk up and, we've done that, and the captains have even come out every so often and they'll just give them their briefing right in person rather than he's like,
talk on the thing.
Yeah, for 2 people we'll just leave the PA alone, or something like that. So it's been kind of funny. So
That's
it's just
funny.
a weird dynamic of very personal, very personal.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It sounds a lot more personal.
There's no food or beverage service right now. There hasn't been for a while. There hasn't been since I think it was like the second week in March or something like that. So they suspended all of that. Now, if you need something, if you're like, oh, you have to take a medication or you want water or something like that, like we still will give it to you, but it's upon request rather than automatically doing that food or beverage service because we're not doing those.
Okay, so you said that was about water. I do have a question here from Alana. She says, "What about snackies?"
Unfortunately, because there's that interchanging of hands, they don't want to pass out any snacks at all. So they've actually removed them from all of the aircrafts. And even if it was one of those flights that was like a long flight where they would normally give food or whatever, like no food of any kind is being passed out. And the only reason why I could do the beverage is because, well, it's in a sealed container. So then I'm just like handing you, the can of Coke or whatever, and then or bottled water.
Wow. So talking about that, even with the longer flights and such, I know that with airlines, and this was always something that was always very different when flying and going onto a train, right? So when you're flying, you can't bring outside food with you. So you only if you buy it in the airport. Is that still like the case?
You can bring your own food. What you cannot, well, once you've purchased it in the airport.
So that's what,
if it's for children, if it's for children, they allow anything for children because, well, you have to feed your child. But as it comes to adults, if it's wet food, it has to be like so You can bring you can't bring like a soup or something like that. Like they won't, TSA won't allow that. TSA has restrictions on what they allow. But say you went and you I don't know, somewhere in the airport, I don't know, Chick-fil-A or something, or
you could bring that over there.
So you can bring any food on board and eat it. What you're not allowed to do is bring alcoholic beverages unless we're the ones that serve it to you. That's actually a federal offense if you drink an alcoholic beverage on aircraft that wasn't served by a flight attendant. It's actually very much frowned upon.
Okay, so then, but you guys aren't serving out. You guys are still serving alcohol, or
we are not?
No.
So first class passengers, if they say that they do want something, I've got to. I don't serve it per se in the
container.
Opening up the little bottle in the drink, but I can hand them their bottle and their can of whatever juice or Coke or whatever, and they'll have to mix it themselves.
Okay.
But that's only to first class passengers upon request. Main cabin, there are no alcoholic beverages being served to main cabin. But if you tell me I really want a Coke, I'll go hand you a Coke. I'm not gonna, we won't do that.
Okay, so what you're saying is buy as many snacks as you want in the airport before you get onto the plane.
Yeah. I mean, I had a passenger who brought her own. I didn't see her bring it on board, but then she had like 4 little bottles of the little liquor bottles, and then as I walk by, I'm like, whoa, hold on.
Hold up.
Then, so then what does she do? She goes and she chugs them all, and I'm like, she's like, oh, I didn't know. And I'm like, really? So that's why you just like downed them in 3 seconds because you just didn't know. So yeah. So she had to have a conversation with some officers once we landed. But hey, I can't help that.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's crazy. Well, that's really interesting. So talking about like being on the flight, what about the cleanliness of flights in general? Like what have you seen be the main thing that has changed? I know that you guys said that you of course wipe down everything, but what have you seen passengers be a little bit more receptive to? Like how have that passengers been acting?
I think overall, anybody who's traveling right now, the people that are traveling right now, either number one, it's because there's a specific need where there's a family member or something where there's an urgency there, A, or B, it's that savvy passenger that travels a lot anyways, whether it is for work or whatever. And everybody has been really conscious of being respectful to other people around them, and I mean, there are some extremists, which is kind of funny. The other day, I'm wearing a mask, and I literally had just put on gloves, and we asked everybody. We were just about to land or something, and to put their seat backs up and their tray tables, and the gentleman had fallen asleep, and I'm like, sir, and he didn't hear me, so then I touched him in the shoulder, and the man jumped up like 5 feet in the air. He's like, "You've touched me." I'm like, okay, I just put these gloves on. He's like, well, do you have something to disinfect my shoulder? I'm like, yeah, like I'm gonna get right on that. Give me just a moment, I will be right back. So I went and I grabbed the wipey, sanitized wipe, and I handed it to him. And I'm like, yeah. So
wow,
there's all types. There's you're gonna run into colorful people anywhere you go. So
that's true.
So you just kind of like take the shots where they come, and you gotta laugh.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. No, you
people
definitely do. And I know that a lot of people have. So, what have the flights been like with how distant people are? I think when we talked previously, it kind of said that more people are traveling now. Yes. You see. So, talk maybe a little bit about that and what social distancing maybe looks like on a plane.
So, like I said, we are not filling the planes completely up. We are, I think it's at a 60% capacity, where they block it off, and that's all they're going to allow is that 60% of passengers to be on board. Okay. So, I mean, the airlines took a huge hit, so they're not going to turn down passengers per se. So, what I'm hoping is that because they're blocking off the flights to be capped out at 60%, that I'm hoping that prompts more flights to go out, because if every single flight ends up being right at that capacity, that 60% capacity, well, then I'm hoping that that prompts them to create more flights. But
Yeah.
I don't think we're there just yet. I think we'll see a big difference come July,
Okay.
as we're starting to see the difference now in June. I went from, no joke, end of March, all of April, and to where I had between one passenger at one time to about 15 at the most
Okay.
during those 6 weeks. Whereas in the last 2 weeks, it's been like 10 to 50
Okay.
passengers. So that's a good,
That's a
yeah.
big jump. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how many people usually fit on a plane? I don't even know if I know that.
Okay, well, it depends on the aircraft. So we got anywhere between I told you we're a regional carrier, so we only have like 76 passengers on ours.
Okay.
So and they're only filling it up to 60%.
Okay. All right. So that's a better idea. Yeah, like 60% of that number. Wow. So that, I'm sure, allows a little bit more of social distancing with seating and everything, but still not as packed as it normally would be, where you're like bumper to
Correct.
bumper. Like,
But remember, it's a small aircraft, so I mean it's an intimate setting. But so, for example, our aircrafts have 2 seats, and then 2 seats together, and then another 2 seats together, and so
okay.
across the aisle there's a total of 4 seats only. Whereas on the bigger aircrafts, you're gonna
middle seats.
Correct. You're gonna have 6 or you're gonna have 8. Going across. It depends on the plane. So on ours, you'll see a lot of just one passenger on one side, one passenger on the other, and then the same thing going all the way down.
Okay.
So like they're all filled, unless you're traveling together. So
Yeah.
if we can accommodate it, we will move you. But it's not like you could put somebody who, if I've got a first class paying passenger, even if it's just one, I can't put somebody from main cabin into first class in order to provide distance, because, well, that one person did pay for it. So it's kind of puts, makes it a little harder that way. But if there's nobody there, and then somebody asked me, well, can I move over? I'm gonna say sure, but it just depends. We have to be accommodating to the people that did pay that extra amount, if that makes sense.
Of course. What's the biggest changes that you see kind of foresee in the future, in the next few months, other than it kind of trickling in with the business wise?
We just don't have furloughs right there. That's my biggest concern, is just to see people furloughed out. There's a lot of that. Our airlines hasn't furloughed anybody, but they have, they're really big. A lot of people have voluntarily kind of taken leave of absence, or they offered like early retirement for those. Like, I've only, I'm going on like 2.5 years, whereas there are people that are 30 years and 35 years or whatever. So, so a lot of people, if it was beneficial to them to just early retirement, they've offered good packages with things like that. So it's going to be different, but I think the good thing about it is, I think people are more conscious of just their surroundings and what it is that's going on, and whether I think we're just going to see a lot more conscientious passengers and shoppers these days. Whereas I think a lot of times, you got doorbuster deals, but then you have to think about, well, where am I going to stay? And then what is their cancellation? So all of these things are so much more, there are so many people that would just travel and it's like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going somewhere and I'll figure it out when I get there. Well, nowadays you have to you got to plan for that. I want to be sure that, where am I going? Where's that finish line look? Because it's not like you can just, willy-nilly go, and because, well, you don't really know where you're going to end up. So now it takes a little more planning. And I think that you'll see a lot more people just being more involved into before they find themselves in a predicament.
Do you have an idea of like, and for those of you guys watching, feel free to pop a question in if you have a question for Myra in the comments, and we will get to that. Do you foresee, like, how long do you think the mask thing is going to be? Like, do you think that that's going to be something that's permanent for like, like ever?
I know for sure. I'd like to say that it will more than likely be for the fact that they just did it now as of yesterday, mandatory for passengers. Well, it's going to be for at least 60 days.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's going to just be the standard going forward. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it, it's kind of ironic where it's like we make an announcement to please wash your hands every 20, for at least 20 seconds and cover your mouth when you sneeze or cough. And like, these are things that we learned in kindergarten. People should be doing this automatically. But it is amazing to me how many people, it's like, oh, really? I should be yes. That would be a great thing to do, So
yeah, that's funny. You're supposed to sing happy birthday, right?
It's just funny. A lot of people just, I don't know, just forgot that major detail. So I think if people are more conscious of their just personal hygiene, I think that they'll be in a lot better shape.
Yeah.
It sounds bad. I don't want to sound bad, but it's just
no.
I'm in the public all the time, and I'll see a person, they come out of the lab, and I'm like, I know you didn't just wash your hands, So then I go in there behind them, and I'm like wiping down. I'm like, oh, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, hopefully, and I think that this has brought a lot of awareness to like personal hygiene just in general. So that being reflected in flights and traveling is good. Just in general, like, I think this is like a reminder, like, hey, make sure that you.
I'm telling you, the airplanes have not been cleaner than what they have been in the last 60 days, 90 days, because, you'll have this, say there's 10 passengers.
Mm-hmm.
There's about 4 of those 10 passengers that are aboard that they grab their wipies and they themselves are wiping it all down, and it's like, okay, you're good. So it's great. It's funny.
On top of what you guys already cleaned.
I'd rather go behind that person and clean their sandy wipes that they left behind than somebody who's just, not being, throwing stuff all over the place and making a big mess. I think we're seeing a lot more, like I said, conscious people of let me tidy things up and let me clean up after myself. So you feel better when you're flying because you're not looking at all this mess everywhere. People are more conscious of their surroundings and what's going on. So I think that's a good thing.
I definitely agree. It's honestly, it's crazy just to think about how much the industry is changing. I know that so many people have been really just curious about what's going on. I mean, well, I know that New York, have you been around that whole area of New York since everything's happened?
I have not been to the city. I've only been to, I went to Albany and I went to Buffalo. And so I'm trying to stay out of the city area at the moment. So, I mean, to be honest, every single person that boarded out of those cities, all of them were wearing masks and a lot of them were wearing gloves. And so that's nice. And this was before it was mandatory, and I think that they just wanted to do that for themselves. So I think that's
I didn't know if more people were, or less people might have been traveling out of those places because of like the fear that's there right now due to everything. So I didn't know if you maybe saw a change with that.
I mean, there's definitely those are some of the places where, because from Florida to New York, there's a lot of people going from Florida to New York, and all of those flights were always filled to the max.
Yeah.
So when we do go to those places in the last 30 days, those are the ones that have been like, 35 passengers, whereas every other flight before that was like 10 or 12 passengers,
Okay.
So there's still like a lot of movement, but again, those passengers that are coming from those places, all of them have been, with their mask on, or some people wear the face shield, and I've seen
Some stuff.
almost like a whole rubber suit, like I've seen all sorts of colorful attire.
Colorful contraptions.
We'll
That's
just go
funny.
with that.
Hi,
But
Noni. Noni
I
says
think,
hi. Noni,
hi.
Karina. Karina. I don't know how to say her last name, but she knows you. She says hi.
Yes.
That's crazy. So the oh, I just had a question in my head and then it just flew out. The areas. I don't know. It just flew from my brain. I totally forgot what I had a whole question and I wanted to say hi to Noni. I forgot. Yeah, no, it's just crazy to see everything that's going on, and I wonder. I remember what it is now. So I just recently took a road trip up to Tennessee and South Carolina. So my brother lives in South Carolina now, and because things are kind of opening back up, and I originally had a plan at the end of March to go up there, but everything happened, and so I didn't. And that was actually a flight, but obviously wasn't going to take a flight. And then I took a road trip up there, and on my way back into Florida, I thought this was very interesting because I was driving through the night because I like to drive at night. There's no traffic. I don't have to deal with people. And I was coming up to the border of Florida, or no, right after I crossed the border of Florida. It was like, slow down, checkpoint. And I was like, what? I was like, what's going on? I'm going to be stopped and they're going to take my temperature. I was like, it was kind of crazy. I was like, having a little mini freak out. I was like, am I hot? I don't think I'm hot.
The Florida line had a checkpoint where they weren't letting passengers in from, or people in from certain states or whatever. It was like,
that's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
So have you seen in places where they're doing like temperature checks or just not letting people in if they're from certain places?
Certain airports have temperature checks, even just to get into the airport. And then there are other ones that like Philadelphia, for example, will not let you have to wear a mask at all times within the airport. I now, like in Charlotte as well, I have to wear a mask in the airport, even in the crew room. Like we just have to wear masks all the time. It's kind of like, it's funny because Port St. Lucie isn't like that, but you go to Palm Beach and you'll see signs at the door that say no mask, no service. I was like, oh, you used to see no shirt, no service, or no shoes, no service. Now it's no mask, no service. So I got my little supply of like masks in the car, so when I forget, but you're just going to see a lot more of that. And then if you're not wearing a mask, it's really funny because you get that little snide look from people. I'm like, okay, I'll go get one. Sorry.
So. Exactly. Yeah. And we have another question. Are airports doing the laser temp checks?
Not. There are some, like I think in Chicago they're doing, but I don't know which ones exactly. It's the larger airports, like I think California has one, and Chicago, the bigger airports. I'm in, I go to the smaller airports because, like I said, I work for the regional carrier, so I'm not going to like Los Angeles, or I'm not going to LaGuardia or JFK or something like that. So I don't know how it is in those because I haven't traveled to them myself.
And you get to choose where you go, right? Is that what you were saying earlier?
So because we work for the regional carriers, they have the big airplanes that go there, not the smaller ones. So we're the commuter flights that go to like the smaller cities. So if you're going to go to Raleigh, you'll probably be in like one of my planes or something like that. We're not going to be in the bigger ones.
Okay. And there's one more. Are airports following those guidelines across the board, or is it subjected to state regulations?
They're all all subjected to state regulations. Each state has their own thing. Even in Florida, we have it in different counties.
Yeah.
So there's a general rule that they want everybody to follow, but it's still mandated by each state separately.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are great questions, Alana. Thank you for inputting them. It has been just, that's crazy. I would have never guessed that half of that was going on. And it's going to be exciting and different to see how travel is. And you know how much I love to travel. So I definitely.
I think, there's still, we're still going to see a lot of traveling being done. And I don't think that traveling is just going to end. There's way too much. There's too much of a need for it, A, or B, people are going to love to travel. So I don't think that that's going to go away anytime soon. But I think it's, like I said earlier, it's just a matter of being conscientious of going with a true plan as to where and how it is you're going to end up. There's all sorts of restrictions. It's really funny. Even like right now is the best time to travel with regards to car rentals. You can rent a car very inexpensively. You can rent a car now for like $18 a day in certain cities.
Wow. It's not bad. What about flight prices? Do you know anything about that? About how they have been?
They have.
I know that's not really your category, but
yeah, no, they've reduced a lot, but it's not gonna be like, I know Allegiant has, really. They always have great prices, but I mean, even more so than before. Yeah. We're talking like, so North Carolina to Punta Gorda, Lee County, or is it Fort Myers? Yeah. So Concord, North Carolina to Punta Gorda on Allegiant. A friend of mine just flew, and it was $82 round trip or something like that.
Wow, that's not bad.
So I mean, they're there, and they have deals like that all the time. The difference is, like I said, is the times are weird. Like you don't. There's major doorbusters to be had, but it just depends on what time of day you're flying. You have to be very flexible as to whether you're going to leave early in the morning or late at night. Those sweet spots of like, oh, I'll just get there at 4:00 or 6:00 in the afternoon. Yeah. Well, those are less to come by, and that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing a lot of right now.
Yeah, because that's how kind of I mean, I don't know how the pricing of airlines work. I used to work for Amtrak, and I knew that in and out. But I know that usually if you're flying at the hours that nobody wants to fly at, it's cheaper than if you're like, yeah, I'm gonna have a 10 a.m. flight or a 5 p.m. flight.
And that's the luxury that we're not seeing at the moment.
Yeah.
It's either that those pertinent flights that are first thing in the morning or towards the end of the night, or other times, for example, there would have been a flight, say at between 6 and 8 p.m. Well, now there's only one by 9 or 10 p.m. And then there's nothing else in between. So either you got on that 11 a.m. flight or you got to wait till 10 o'clock at night or something like that. So that part kind of stinks, but you still have options if you're traveling leisurely. There's still some options, but they're just not as flexible as they used to be.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's really interesting. Well, I think you've answered all of my questions, and thank you to everybody who has put in their questions and their input. That was very informative, and I know that a couple of people had mentioned that they found it very informative, and thank you. So I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing your wealth of knowledge and kind of giving us the inside details from a flight attendant's point of view.
Yeah, well, I don't want to make it in any official capacity. This is just me.
Yeah, so, no, just you.
My personal experience of it. So I don't want to, put it in any official capacity. But I'll let you know what my experience is, and if I could relate to it, I'll certainly relay it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. I don't see any more comments coming in, so I think we might end it with that. Unless you have any final words you want to mention Wash your hands, everyone.
Yes.
When you fly.
Please wash your hands, people.
Oh, yeah, the tips that I got: wash your hands, bring a mask, required to bring a mask, and buy all the snacks in the airport that you could ever want.
Exactly. And something to drink. And no alcohol on the aircraft.
And no alcohol. Don't buy alcohol. You better wait until you get to a bar.
Yes, please, please, please.
Oh, that's all. So drink at the bar. Tip number 4, drink at the bar before you get on the plane.
Yes.
That's funny. That's so funny. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone who tuned in to watch. You'll be able to rewatch this video and get all of the amazing tips and insight that Myra had from her personal experiences being a flight attendant. So we truly appreciate that. And I hope you guys will all tune in next week to my edition of Travel Tip Tuesday. I will have another guest and I will be posting on my page soon about who that's going to be. So thanks so much, guys. Have an amazing day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.